Welcome back to another episode of the Everyday Leader podcast. Super excited to bring an interview between Matt, myself, and Tim Thompson. Tim Thompson is the owner and chief revolution thinker at RevThink, and they're the industry's leader in supporting creative entrepreneurs. He's supported and worked with over the last 25 years hundreds of agencies and as a creative, when I say creative entrepreneurs, specifically those in film and movies and Hollywood, and just has some incredible experience and lessons about leadership, not just in work, but also in your family. He has a podcast. He's known for the 7 ingredients, the factors method, the 4 stages of the creative career, the entrepreneurial formula, and he has a community called the Rev Community with over 700 members in 60 countries. Excited to share his lessons of leadership today.
Welcome to the Everyday Leader podcast. Leadership is a choice. Join me, Matt, and my co-hosts Drew and Tate each episode as we break down how to lead powerfully in your family, team, and organization.
Welcome to today's episode of the Everyday Leader podcast. Matt and I are joined today by Tim Thompson, the owner and founder of RevThink, and he's supported hundreds of agencies and businesses over the years. A lot of experience in helping creative entrepreneurs grow. We're excited to have you with us today, Tim, and kind of hear your lessons and what you've learned about leadership along the way.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Just the title of your podcast alone, An Everyday Leader, is such a fascinating concept because I think leadership people often want to be promoted or pushed somewhere. But you guys have really found like the magic formula that you are a leader every day in every way. So to talk about this and to be part of this conversation is very, very fun. So thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, totally. Well, maybe let's start with that, Tim. What, I guess, in your mind, we find this changes a lot from organization to organization, person to person, but like, how would you define leadership? What is leadership in your mind?
Well, I have to go off of personal experience here a little bit, and then talking specifically with creative entrepreneurs. So, kind of the qualifier of a creative person opposed to a non-creative business or a non-creative person. One of the key words that, quite honestly, everyone has to use all the time is like vision. It really is vision, and I think of vision is somewhat optical. I know that it's like images in our mind. It's actually not traveling through our eyeballs. But I think a true visionary can almost honestly see the future they're trying to create and then move towards that future. The trick is bringing people along with them. Um, and one thing that I've seen as a challenge, my saying is the general too far in front of his army can be mistaken as the enemy. So somebody that's vision is way too big and far out there and doesn't know how to bridge the gap of where people currently are and then where they need to be and then do the work of getting someone there. You can you can be a visionary and not be a leader. The leader is the one that knows how to walk alongside whoever they're leading or whoever they're working with and supporting and help them along the journey that they're on. So that's probably a really long answer, not a very clear definition, but those are definitely the ingredients I'd put out there as a leader.
No, that's so good. I've never heard the general that's too far out in front of his army could be perceived as the enemy. That's incredible.
That's awesome.
And that like strikes a chord with me because I am like a very visionary person and like grew up just a dreamer and thought that was normal. And then I have several experiences over the last 15 years where people said things and I'm like, wait, not everyone thinks like that. Like not everyone can see what I can see, So obviously that's true. But when I was younger, like I didn't have any reason to believe that. So I love this idea of like that the vision, like we want a big vision and leadership happens in our ability to connect people with it and show them like how it happens, how we get there. That's beautiful.
Matt, I have a very personal story that actually kind of inspires me even today as a leader. When I was in elementary school, there's like a substitute teacher. and they were just, trying to waste time. So they gave us a stack of like, I don't know, dot to dots or whatever. But one of them was mazes, those old fashioned mazes. And for some reason in the 80s, maze books were really kind of fun. But she gave us a stack of those to occupy our time. And I was done sooner than the other students. And she asked me how did I get done so fast? And I was like, gosh, it's easy. If you start at the finish and you work way to start, it's really easy to do the mazes. And then she said to me, well, you can't do that. That's cheating. And that moment sticks with me because I remember going home to my mom and asking her, like, and telling her, I'm upset. Like, she called me a cheater. And I didn't see it that way. I thought I just figured out the trick. I thought there was like a big meta trick and they were basically testing us and I passed the test instead of cheating. Today, my wife calls that rev thinking. She goes, there you are, rev thinking again. Like, I requalify people that want to think differently and push differently because starts and finish can be arbitrary. So I don't push people towards like crazy fraud or whatever, but the idea of thinking outside the box or thinking in this way backwards from the future into the present is a very rev thinking concept. And if anyone listens to my podcast or does see our weekly briefings, they'll know Tim does that a lot. There's definitely that reverse maze person happening all the time in the way I consult people.
Yeah, that is awesome. Okay, so I like this vein that we're in right now. Can you speak to like lessons you've learned, experiences you've had where you've been able to connect your forward thinking, future thinking, out of the box thinking for people to be able to see something they couldn't see before and like get enrolled, get engaged? Because I think that sometimes that's a challenge for leaders, right? Like they can see things that other people can't see. And then how do we translate that into something that gets people enrolled, engaged, in action, unified around something?
Yeah, listen, I was very blessed with a career before I became a consultant. And in that career, I didn't know what I really wanted to do. I didn't know what the title was that I was gifted at. But I ended up being a producer. And in Hollywood, a producer, the job is to kind of make the project get done. So a friend of mine taught me years ago that a director wins best director at the Oscars, but the producer wins best picture, like the overall big picture idea. And my mind just gravitated towards that as a position. What happens is imagine someone coming to you with a creative idea and they're just giving you an expression of what they're looking for. So imagine like George Lucas saying, I want to do an episodic star picture where these guys are in space and doing all this, fighting with these lightsaber stuff. And you've never seen it before. A producer has to say, wait, how do we actually get that done? Like, what are the technical parts of it? So you have to broadcast or forecast what we're trying to accomplish. And then you have to deal with the practical realities and then bridge that gap along the way. So that's what producers do. That's what I did originally when I was in production. And that's how eventually I became a consultant, is from that experience. Specifically, what the job I was most known for was that in the late 90s, there was a film called Seven. It was a Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman movie, a Kevin Spacey movie. But that we were in charge of the title sequence, so the opening credits for the film. And at that moment in time, nobody had used computer editing to the degree we were able to do it. So an Avid, very common today, but not so common yet for film editing. And we had to finish it on film, not digitally. So there's like this gap in time where one thing was advancing, but the other had not advanced enough. And we had to like physically create this title sequence. And nobody had really put those pieces together before. So that visionary mind, and also some very, very smart people, because I was working at a super talented company, were able to like snap these pieces together and formulate a task and a tactic of doing it. That title sequence really kind of launched a lot of our careers. And we started working right after that with, quite honestly, the world's greatest directors. Ridley Scott, David Fincher was the director of Seven. I worked with Steven Spielberg. I worked with Robert Redford. I mean, it was like all the A-list directors were asking us to make their version of that same thing. So that's one very specific moment where the visionary mind had to see it and then find out all the practical reality and work it back to the present so you can make that bridge and get it done.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Tim, maybe what we didn't do a good job of early in the episode is like tell our listener a little bit about, that journey from doing that to what you do now.
Yeah, it's actually pretty fascinating. So that company that we did that title sequence for, we became known as Imaginary Forces. And Imaginary Forces, or IF, is still around today. It's been going on for 30 years. So that's a major accomplishment in the creative industry to be that relevant for that long. And they still are one of the best in opening credits and title sequences. So they're doing Marvel films and the TV shows that we all love. If you look at the credits, it's most likely them or a few other high brand names that are doing it. For me, I started. I was one of the founding members of it. I wasn't an owner, but just one of the founding people in that company, and I worked there for about 7 years. But burnout is real. The time had come, and I had advanced through the company to a certain point. It was just time for me to leave. I wasn't expecting it, but kind of when I left, my identity didn't transfer with me. And I was kind of stuck in this, like, who am I and what is it for real? And I wasn't much of a religious person, but I had a very, like, you know, come to Jesus moment, quite literally, working with a mentor. And that epiphany or that life change, or really, like, say, like dropping the ego that was running my career before, that was always depending on me and a whole bunch of just egotistical effort to get something done, and finding, more like grace or an abundance mentality or life purpose first, and then do what you love second as a recreation. When I relaunched myself, it was very fitting to I have to be my own leader. It's not, you know, Jesus is not known for being very religious, to be honest. So to be someone that was standing out, trying to navigate my own life, I'm an adult convert. I didn't even know what I was getting into, but I knew I really loved it, and I knew I wanted to be around it. So I actually worked at a church. I was a pastor at a church, an associate pastor, not a lead pastor, but associate pastor at a church. And I was working with a movie trailer company known as Trailer Park. And the time I was doing that, Trailer Park grew from 40 people to 400 people. And then they sold the business and exited. And I went through that entire transition with them as an operations person. So I'd seen all these evolutions of a business. And those two things coming together made me think I probably know something and I should do something different. And RevThink was started. So just as a funny nod, my company is called Revolution Thinking. So revolution is a time of change or purpose, and thinking is just thinking. So if you're a consultant, obviously you're thinking in a time of change. But I shrunk it to RevThink because Rev is also a nod to being a reverend. And so to have RevThink is also just like a little part of like who I am in that journey. And today I like to say, like, I serve the people I love. I really love creative entrepreneurs. There's a purpose they have in life. There's something very important they contribute. And for me to come alongside them and let them be the full person they need to be, it's very fulfilling for me in all the areas. And it matches my background and my love and experience within Hollywood.
That's awesome. It's also interesting because I think when I heard RevThink, revenue was the first thing that came to my mind. So it's interesting that there's actually two other terms that were embedded in there.
Yeah.
I love what you said, Tim. It was almost, and maybe I'm going to uh, take this from what you said, but almost, and we talk about this a lot here on the podcast, but almost you have to lead yourself before you can go lead others. And it kind of sounds like you went through that.
Right. I mean, servant leadership, who doesn't know that as a book and understanding of, oh, wait a second, there's some reality to leading. Has to be something deep inside of you you have to be clear first. So on solid ground, very anchored in what you're doing, and something that can be consistent. So your integrity is very important in leadership. But then also to convert that to not be a power play, but to serve others or to build up others so that there's growth. That's where growth comes from, is I like to call it the other people-ness. So you have to understand who other people are, what they're about, and then grow other people. You have to wrap your mind around that. So your ego can't be in the way. And I needed an ego check. I really kind of needed to be humbled, to be honest. And it was a great 7-year movement, but my life is better. And I think I'm still married today because of that reset. So it worked all good for me.
So one of the things that like I've found for myself and many others in what you're describing, and like kind of that moment where it's like, oh, I'm I'm having this kind of like revolution of myself and wanting to be a more intentional leader for myself, is this idea that all change or transformation or progress, even we could call it, begins with telling yourself the truth.
Mm.
Do you have anything that stands out that you remember, like realizing, oh wow, like I have been hiding or not being truthful with myself, and like I'm having this powerful realization, like I'm going to confront it head on instead of try to avoid it?
Yeah. So I think the moment in time that I had was I was having an issue in business, and I wasn't acting, I wasn't doing very well with my own like choices within that business. And my wife said to me, are you upset because, it didn't work out the way you wanted? Or are you upset because you got caught in what you were doing? And I was like, well, obviously I was upset that it didn't turn out the way I want to. I don't know how to be upset for being caught. Like I didn't really understand guilt the way I should have. And that scared the crap out of me. So that began this journey of like, wait a second, there are probably things I need to start to understand about other people and how the world works. So I'm not just being a bully or being pushy or not considering things. Like that rev thinking mind can basically say break all the rules. And the reality is that's not who I was. I actually wasn't the person who I actually wanted to be. The person my wife married, the person I wanted to be the father to my kids. I wasn't being that person. I was successful, but I wasn't that person. And that reset helped me find the mentor, helped me ask the right questions, and then helped me understand where I really belong in the universe and how, what we're looking at and the purpose of what we're doing has a big picture quality to it. And that reset for me was obviously like, it was a pretty fast conversion, but it was a great conversion.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've just found like a very common theme, again, like for myself and many others that I've talked to, that there is that type of moment you're describing, or maybe it's not even a one moment, but a time period of like really reflection and being willing to go confront what we've been avoiding.
Yeah, so Matt, I'm picking up the with your shirt that you must go to church. I'm just gonna guess.
Yeah. What It's funny because I had someone see me wear this shirt once and they're like, what about loving others like Jesus? And I'm like, no, it just didn't fit on the shirt, I guess. But yeah, I'm with you. Like loving Jesus is one thing, loving other people like he did, that's like more my thing.
Yeah, might be a good thing too. There's one thing I realized when I was in seminary, a lot of church and church growth likes this road to Damascus experience. And maybe if your listeners don't know this, the road to Damascus is the Apostle Paul on the road to Damascus gets knocked off his horse and has a very acute moment of conversion. And he was pushing, like he was killing Christians to becoming the main author of the New Testament. So a huge, amazing conversion. So the road to Damascus is what we talked about. But there's also in the same New Testament this idea of the road to Emmaus. And the road to Emmaus, very different story. These two men were walking with a third person, and they journeyed all the way home, a long journey. And in the journey, the stranger was telling them about history and whatever. And when they got to their final destination, then they realized the whole way they were walking with Jesus, and then they learned something. So I think that these road to Emmaus experiences are also very beneficial in understanding and conversion. And it's not any better or worse than Damascus. It's just not as glamorous or as poppy. But there is something to what you said there, which is like, oh, wait a second, pay attention to the journey as well, because those will give you the clues of who you are and give you an understanding of truth. That's what we're looking for, so that we can, again, like serve well, lead well, and be who we actually want to be, loving others and you know grow and build up others in that process.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that helps us create grace and space for ourselves, right? Like for any listener that's wondering like, Am I behind? Am I a powerful leader? Have I had this moment or this transformation? It's like, it's less about that and more about just like, sometimes it is a moment, a powerful moment. Sometimes it's more of like the long journey. And either way though, like you're fine. You're just right. Like keep going, you know.
That's right. That's right. Keep your focus. Trust what you trust. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, Tim, with working with so many organizations over the years, what what are the traits of leadership you've seen in the organizations that have leadership figured out versus those that don't? I'm sure with that many, I mean, with the number you've worked with, I'm sure you've seen a, a spectrum of leadership.
Yeah. So one of my theories in the creatives in the world I'm in, right? So Hollywood production, studio production. So my clients work in feature films. They might work with music concert venues. I had one client that makes all the graphics for Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande for their concert tours. People that are creating TV shows and feature films, or some people just commercial animation. So the spectrum can be very long, but it's often in the entertainment space that they're working. In that space, we go beyond just the desire of entrepreneurialism, which is basically fortune and eventually freedom. But in creative, they're looking for fame also. So fame, fortune, and freedom are the driving forces of a creative entrepreneur. A lot of consultants don't really understand and appreciation the drive for fame. It seems egotistical. It seems to be self-fulfilling. But in reality, there are some people that are built to get something out of them. They must contribute something creatively. It's stuck inside. And there are storytellers, are poets. They're the ones that are contributing to a bigger understanding, and they can be very persuasive. So fame actually has a very important role also. And if you're built that way, you have to express it. There's no like hiding that part of it. So navigating fame, fortune, and freedom is something that obviously creative entrepreneurs are asking themselves the question, because any one of those in the wrong order or to emphasize too much can create a heavy burden or lack of success. And it does lead to a lot of unhappiness when you just push one of those over the others. What I've learned is that in the creative space, and that fame is often the one that people understand first. They try to get a job that they could be known for doing something. So they're trying to make that film and get some notoriety along the way. And once you get past that part, money comes. So that it almost becomes, to some degree, in a funny way, a burden to a really creative person. They'll tell me, I have clients that tell me, it's not about the profit. And I have to say, I'm going to teach you something. You won't be in business without profit. So we have to learn how profit works. It doesn't have to be the dominating force because you have this creative thing you're trying to express, but it has to be part of it. So fame leads to fortune. But in reality, what we're all looking for is this freedom element. Freedom being is the control over the projects you're doing, expressing it the way you want to do it, and gaining your own kind of growth or your own followers along the way. So that's freedom comes at the result of that other work. And to know how to navigate and stack that properly. So your question was about leadership. What happens is in leadership, you have to understand, and where I often help people is the transitions between those stages. What do I have to let go of in one and gain in another? And sometimes there's hard decisions, like the people I started my business with aren't the people that are going to get me to the next stage. That's really bad. That's really hard because they feel like family, and I wish them the best, but I know I need to make myself secure, my business secure, or contribute something bigger. And this team might be holding us back. So that transition is a tough transition for some people, just in the human nature part of it. Um, the next stage is actually understanding the principles that we're working on, or the basis that you're working on. So a lot of people need help with the why factor, why they're actually doing what they're doing. And then for if the industry changes or demand changes or new opportunities come, you know which ones to choose and which ones to not. So business decision making is something that's very difficult because you have to honestly find somebody you love and trust to tell them the truth about who you are in order to help have them help you navigate through it. That's why we love business partners. You can kind of share each other's personal values and life values that way, or to find an outside person is very helpful. It's really hard to find an employee that then you can burden with all your life desires and think that they're going to come to work every day. They're going to be like, dang, this is way too much. I just want to work for a living and get a paycheck. So I think leadership has its struggle of like where we need to put that information and who to collaborate with properly so that we can get that stuff working and focusing and functioning the right way.
That's super interesting, Tim. I've often thought about the um, fortune and freedom, but not the fame and how important that might be. I could see it, especially in your space and even in others. And you know, it's interesting. I've been wanting to make a bigger impact myself, and the thing I probably don't want at all is the fame. And I've recognized to make a bigger impact, you if not being famous, you need to be known.
Known.
If you want to make an impact, or it's
your
hard to make a
product
big impact. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know the guy that invented Post-it notes, but I know that some people know his name. And the product itself, if someone showed up and said, I invented Post-it note, I'm like, oh, you're the guy, right? So you don't have to necessarily put yourself out there, but you're right. There's got to be that kind of attachment to something so that they can recognize you as a person to follow. And then that ability is there. So fame, fortune, and freedom are the first three. I haven't found the right word that start with F. So I like to say what we actually need is influence. So I had to take the F part of it. Because I think that's what it is. And today's world influence is very misunderstood because we think influencer, like the social media fake famous crap that's out there. And I don't mean that at all. I actually mean an influence where like you, through your love and expression, when asked to do something, they know you'll always be there for them and they will always be there for you. And that give and take is actual real influence. So what I think influence is really the power behind the fame, fortune, and freedom. So fame adds influence, fortune obviously has its own influence, and freedom has its ability, or you have to have influence to have some freedom. So that's the thing we're actually navigating. And I think that's where leadership comes in the most, is understanding influence and then working with that. And again, not being a bully or being a jerk about it. That's the tricky part, because influence can be very powerful and people can get it wrong.
Yeah. I do love that, though. I think that may be one of the most relatable terms associated with leadership, right? Because all of us have been influenced by people and all of us influence people. Now we can look at what was that influence, right? Was it useful and fruitful and powerful or not? And I love that because we can learn from our experience with other leaders and then also look at like what is our influence? What is my influence right now? Is it what I want it to be or not?
Yeah, to me, like I probably depend on my fatherhood experience when it comes to understanding leadership more than anything else, because
We're aligned with
oh my gosh, and it's what an amazing thing and what a burden, because the reality is your kids will listen to and follow you regardless if you're good at a leadership or not, right? So they'll be like what they say, more is caught than taught. So that burden alone of like, wait a second, I should double check every thought I'm having because this creature is being coded by me as I say and do this stuff. This is not a good idea. I don't know if I'm the right person for it. So that audit that you need in fatherhood, but also to start seeing the benefit of that in another human growing. And I'm a father of 5 boys, right? And my boys the youngest is 18, so they're adult age and more. I'm actually a grandfather at this point. My grandkid is 10 months old. And I'll tell you, like, I know all people are biased about their kids, but I think my kids are really great. These men are really amazing men. They love their wives. They really care about the importance of the environment they're part of, the world that they're contributing to. And I think they're going to be great fathers and great husbands too. So to me, it's like, whew, I feel like I lucked out along the way. And by the way, my wife probably deserves a lot more of the leadership. I should bring her in. She can talk about real leadership. But the opportunity there is just like, it's a good audit. Well, so if I understand that to what it means to be a business owner or a life coach or anything else that's out there for people, you have to really understand that people are going to listen to you and more will be caught than taught. You really need to be thinking about that and then know what that means to be the right model, as well as, keep on learning, keep on striving, keep on having vision so that you can contribute more and more to them in their life.
I love that, Tim. We talk about that a lot. In fact, Matt and I used to coach at an agency together, and some of his clients would always joke that the leadership lesson always started with a story of Matt talking about a lesson with his son. And yeah, it's so true. Yeah, it's never been more confronting to say, hey, this is how we live, and then have one of your boys say, Dad, you said this, but you're
Yeah.
doing that.
Oh, dude. No, I tell you, the worst is like, I'll tell you, this is not the worst, but it really feels like I could tell my flaws were, I don't know where my tools are. And I blame my kids all the time because they use my tools. They've destroyed my garage. But in reality, I also don't put my tools away. So I don't know what's me. And as fewer and fewer kids live in my house, I'm more and more realizing maybe it was me more than it was them that didn't put my tools away. And I was always blaming them. But I did find some hammers out in the field next to the treehouse that I'm sure I didn't put out there as well. So I wasn't totally wrong along the way. Wait, so how many kids do you have, Matt?
I have 4. Our oldest is 9, boy, and then 3 girls, 6, 3, and
Oh,
1.
how awesome. That's really great.
I've got 4 as well, 11-year-old girl and 3 boys, 8, 6, and 2. So
Oh, that's great. You guys are almost there. 5
we're
is
in the
just
middle of
around
it.
the corner. We'll just,
Yeah. 4 is the new 6.
Is that what it
That's
is? Yeah.
what they're saying.
I don't know about you guys. People ask me all the time about like, how do you do it? How many kids or whatever? And I tell them like, 1 was the hardest because we were still 2 selfish individuals and we just dragged that kid along with us, but we didn't change our lifestyle much at all. When we started playing man to man at 2, we started a little bit like, okay, we probably should function differently. But when they outnumbered us 3-2, is when I say we became a family and we became parents because we bought the minivan and we just changed. That's what we were. 3 to 5 is like it's nothing. We already were a family. Just throw more in the back, kind of a thing. So
Yeah.
that's the blessing of like learning that some life lesson is like getting out of that selfish mode and getting into mode where like, oh wait, we have to function as a whole unit first.
Yeah.
Can we just say, Tim, a true leader drives a minivan? Is that?
I've been fighting against that for 9 years and still winning that battle.
Okay. Yeah, but you'd probably drive an SUV. I'm gonna say like there's more seats
right.
somewhere. Yeah.
That's right. Well, yeah, I like to say that it, like being, in a family, in a relationship, in a family type relationship is the ultimate leadership laboratory. And not that it's the only way to learn leadership for sure. And the elements of it though, to me, are like the fact that you're so close to someone. And so you also know more about these people, how they tick, their vulnerabilities, their weaknesses, so I find that it's like the people that I love the most are actually the people that I could hurt the most easily because I know the most about them. I know the most about like their real, true, authentic selves. And so it asks for a lot of constraint and a lot of continual exercising of love. And so, but I believe that those principles are the same in your team.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it's a different layer or level, and it's the same principles that apply. Like you get to know someone, you love someone, you support someone, you be vulnerable with someone, and ultimately like work together to create a bigger vision.
Isn't one of the hardest lessons though? And I don't really think there's a simple answer to how to navigate this, but how much you actually might love them more than they love you. Like that's some reality. And we're using a very strong word, love, but I do think that there is a compassionate part of our heart that looks at our employees and we think of them first, like way more than we should. We do harm to ourselves and our bank accounts to keep their lifestyle going than being hardcore. And I know that there are some I have business books on my shelf right here. They're telling me like that's a bad move, but it's really, really, really difficult to not deal with that as a principle of a business. And I think that there is some reality of like where that might, I don't know, we might become jaded in leadership too, because we start just thinking, well, screw everybody. I'm just going to go for the money or I'm just going to go for whatever. And there are some very jaded leaders out there that you're almost like, yeah, somebody hurt them along the way. But there is a reality of like just what that leadership feels like.
Yeah. definitely.
Well, how about this, Tim? What would you say to someone who maybe our listener, if they are in a new leadership role or they're in a position that's requiring them to step up as a leader, what would you give as advice to someone who's like, hey, I'm trying to be a better leader. How can I do that?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so one thing we probably all could agree on is like always be learning. You cannot sit still. That's almost the primary thing people are looking to you for, is that you are ahead of them when it comes to an understanding. Not smarter with them, or it's not that you can't hire somebody that has a certain strength, but when it comes to the leadership qualities, where are we going, why are we doing this, and what's important, that's what you're providing. And always be learning just kind of checks that ego at the door to make sure you're thinking differently about things. I think my biggest encouragement for people I work with is the power of community. When I first got started, I mean, it was very cutthroat. We did not share resources. People wanted the other people to go away. It was really, really, really kind of a nasty environment. It's super competitive. You can imagine something that's as glamorous as Hollywood also makes it very competitive, and you have to have a very competitive mindset to get into that career and then stay in that career. So the difficulty I had is getting one business owner talking to the other business owner, because they could learn a lot from each other and be able to feel the power of that collaboration. For a while, I was just a conduit. I'd learn from one and say, "Do you know how this person does it?" Whatever. And kind of just, that's the way what my job was. But when the community finally just broke open and they started talking to each other and collaborating instead of having a conduit in the middle, the relationships and the power relationships and partnerships that come up with competitors. I I have I know two competitors, one a current client of mine, one a former client of mine, that I introduced at a dinner. They quite literally pitch against each other frequently. But you know what they do the day before they pitch? They share their pitches with each other. They go, "I know I'm going to try to beat you tomorrow, but can you give me some feedback on what my pitch looks like?" And they collaborate a little bit, share that. They're the best of friends now, and then they pitch against each other who's going to win the project, right? So you can imagine how much more healthy and strong and better everybody is because they think that way. But when you're desperate for cash flow, you also need that money, and that could be very kind of scarcity
Right.
mentality, hold back some of that generosity. So if you can find a network of people to collaborate with, people that understand what you do for a living, if you're a creative entrepreneur and talk to someone that owns a laundromat, it doesn't really kind of meld. You have to find people that you can embed with the same thoughts that you have, or the same needs that you have for your business. That is so much power behind the community. It's just incredible, the difference. And then, of course, find mentors. So if you can find a mentor to lead your way, find peers that you collaborate with, and then be a leader to people below you, and you have those three kind of tiers of leadership, I think that kind of leaves you in balance and keeps you healthy.
That's really
Great.
good, Tim. I love that. Have a mentor, have a community, have others you can go
And then
lead.
be a mentor. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Be a mentor to someone else. Yeah, that's so good. I've for a long time as a entrepreneur and always having that spirit, I kind of felt like I was the crazy one. Like other people don't get me or think this way. And I love what you said about community, because as I've tried to expand and find more people like that, I've continued to find that community, and it's so empowering to have others, especially if they're in the same industry, even if they're not, that think how you do, that dream big, that are supportive, that want to see you win. In fact, I remember an experience early in my sales career, um, running into somebody at church that he did the same thing I did at a different business in town, and I kind of jokingly said to him, "Oh, I guess we're competition." Like, and he said, "Hey, there's plenty to go around for both of us. There's more than enough. If you ever need anything, please reach out and let me know, because I'm happy to help
Amazing.
you and support you." And so I always viewed him as a mentor, and grateful that he had an abundant mindset and was willing to be a leader to me early on. So I love that.
I love that too, because here you guys have to have this experience too, right? Because I think all entrepreneurs have this experience. So people ask you what you do for a living, and then you you tell them the easiest thing. I sell lumber, or I sell life insurance, whatever. But in reality, like, you're a leader, so you don't when you're having that basic conversation, you don't say, leadership. And if somebody doesn't understand leadership, the conversation kind of becomes boring for you, but also not very fulfilling, because you're just talking about the exchanges, not the real work that you're doing. So to have somebody like your competitor that actually understands the role that you're in and says, no, I can relate to you on the issues of leadership as well as the execution of the work that you're doing, that kind of connection truly only comes from the competition. Your employees can't relate to you at that level, and your clients don't want to relate to you at that level. They want to hand off that burden to you. So you have to be able to understand that other competition and then break through some of those barriers. It's just such a big picture benefit, all like as a whole person, than just the little bits and pieces. I could talk about finances, and I could talk about finances to, the local hair supply person or whatever, the beauty supply person. But like, sure, I can balance a book for you, but that's not what I do for a living. I run businesses. I'm a leader of a business, not like the finance person of a business. So those are like kind of like the collaborations we really want, or connections we really want.
Well, this has been awesome, Tim. What's the best way for people to engage with you or with RevThink?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, the easiest place to find us is our website, RevThink.com. Most people actually find us through our podcasts. So podcasts are where this podcast is. Our podcast is called RevThinking. So just RevThink with an ing at the end. RevThinking is very easy to find. But we also, if you're a creative entrepreneur and you're interested in being part of community, you can find our community in the App Store. Just look for RevThink in the App Store. You can download the app and come into the community. We're using a platform that's very easy. We have discussion forums. We do weekly videos called the Weekly Briefing, as well as answer questions and contribute. But the key thing is it's those other business owners are in there sharing, and honestly, very honestly sharing some of the issues that are happening. And today, there's a lot of changing in the industry with the technological advancements. So there's a lot of great things to collaborate on and meet people that are in the same space as you. So to me, community is the best way to engage us. The best way to find us is our website, RevThink.com.
Well, we have a question we love to always end our episode with, Tim.
Okay.
How would you like to be remembered?
Jeez. I should have prepared for that one there, Drew. Come on. This wasn't in the pregame thing. It's interesting, as a pastor at a church, I sat through a lot of funerals. So I've actually thought of legacy a lot. It's so sad when a family stands up and says, my dad really loved his Sunday football. You could always find him with a beer in his armchair watching. And that conversation that happened way too often. Or my dad really loved his golf game. I didn't really spend the weekends with him, but he sure loved playing golf. So to me, it's the contribution you make in other people's life, but it's time, right? So it's a time commitment that's there. I say quite literally, I work for the thank yous. And what I mean by that, it means that I had to contribute something first to receive that thank you back. And I think that's probably what the legacy is there. So one person did joke with me because I guess I say, oh, I'm happy to help. I like to say that a lot. Sure, I'm happy to help. And they almost said, well, yeah, that's your catchphrase, Tim. Is like, you're always just there. You're happy to help, and you're always giving to others first. So it feels like that's the legacy it's playing out, and it feels very satisfying to me. So I'll take that as my final answer.
That's excellent.
Oh,
it's been great to meet you guys. It's great to spend this time with you. Thank you very much for joining us. Yeah,
Thanks
of course.
Appreciate your time today, Tim, and for all the nuggets and valuable insights for our listener. And for those that are listening today is the day.
Thanks for joining us on the Everyday Leader podcast. If you're ready to take your leadership journey even further, subscribe to our weekly newsletter for more insights and practical tips. And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram to stay a part of our growing community. Just follow the links in the show notes. If this episode impacted you, please help us spread the word and share the link with a friend from wherever you're listening.